Hello, friends, and welcome into Tennessee Titans Today. I am Tom Downey here with a trade mailbag, answering all of your ideas and theories and suggestions when it comes to trades for Tennessee. Before we get going, type me in the comments section if you want the Titans to add another wide receiver. I asked this question because about 80 to 90% of the questions, ideas, and trades related comments we got were about a wide receiver. So if you want one, show it by typing me in the comment section. Our first trade mailbag question, or idea, I should say, from Sambo. Do you think the Titans should make a big trade for a receiver like Tyler Lockett or a depth trade like N'Keal Harry, Jalen Reagor, etc.? I do think in the end, a depth option is much more likely. Obviously, I and many of you watching wanted Tennessee to pay A.J. Brown. They chose not to go that route. So I don't know why they would turn around and trade for another receiver somewhat in that range. Lockett probably a little bit cheaper. They already made one trade for Robert Woods. They drafted Treylon Burks in the first round. I want more receiver because I don't think this team is talented enough at receiver. I would love to find at least competition for NWI at the wide receiver 3 spot. So I think depth makes more sense because you could get a N'Keal Harry for next to nothing because he's not very good. A Jalen Reagor for also next to nothing because he's been a bust so far, although I think better than N'Keal Harry, but his contract is a bit more problematic for Philadelphia than Harry's is for New England. So I think the depth route is a little bit more likely. Of the two receivers that were mentioned by Sambo, who would you rather have on the Titans roster? NH for N'Keal Harry, JR for Jalen Reagor. I go Reagor because of some potential punt return value, but sound off in the comments. NH or JR? From Yusuf Brogamer, here's a trade idea. Tyler Lockett, like we just had in the previous one, in exchange for a 4th-round pick. I don't think that's enough of an offer for Tyler Lockett because this is a receiver who has consistently been a 1,000-yard player the past 4 years. Only 965 in 2018. The targets were down. Injuries, of course, are part of it, but even averaged over 4 years. Talking about someone who averages 9 touchdowns and 1,000 yards. Even as he begins to age, that is very valuable to any NFL team. In a pure bubble, I think this is a fantastic trade target. He can do some slot stuff, but he's fast and can be a vertical threat for you as well. I've long thought that Lockett is one of the more underrated wide receivers in the NFL. When he first signed his extension years ago, I was like, that's a lot for Lockett. And then he's been a baller ever since then in a major way, and he made me look pretty stupid there. So I would love Lockett. I think I got to start the bidding with a 3rd-round pick for a team that could move on from him, but don't save that much money. So I think it's a good name, but got to bump the offer there. So in an ideal world, would you trade for Tyler Lockett? This is going to be the pinned comment on today's video. So if the ad break comes here on YouTube, I want you guys to take advantage of it. Type in Y for yes or N for no at that pinned comment. From CJ Leader, should the Titans consider snatching Kadarius Toney from the Giants? Toney is a very unique player in he had an awesome game against the Cowboys. He had most of his damage done in that game, actually, and then got ejected for throwing a punch. And beyond that, didn't do much of anything. The talent is there for Kadarius Toney. He's a good football player when he's out there. But I have trust issues with Toney, given all of the issues he's run into in his time in New York. And there's also this conundrum. Teams do not move on from their 1st-round pick a year into their contract unless there is a major problem. See Isaiah Wilson. So if you could get him for a feasible cost, it should actually raise significant red flags about wanting to add that player. So in the end, A, I don't think the Giants are going to move him. And B, if they were going to move him, you actually probably don't want him at that point. Now, if you love the Titans, please help us get to 4,000 subscribers that we can keep doing more videos. Tennessee is way behind everybody else. Help producer Jack feed his cats by subscribing to Titans Today at youtube.com/Titans Today. From Amber Skinner, better than heard, allegedly. Trade with Washington trade for Washington, defensive tackle Daron Payne, and wide receiver Terry McLaurin for a first, Dupree, Hooker, and Cunningham. McLaurin should be cheaper than Metcalf, Brown, etc. re-sign, but hopefully a shorter deal than 3 to 4 years. That last part I'm going to get into, but an easier-to-read trade package. Daron Payne, Terry McLaurin, Bud Dupree, Zach Cunningham, and Amani Hooker. Hooker and Dupree are actually pretty decent assets to give up. I think Hooker actually have more value for the Commanders. They don't need an edge. Safety could be an area of focus. McLaurin's worth about a first and a third. Daron Payne, a third-ish, somewhere in that area. So I'm not sure you're giving up enough value to acquire two of the Commanders' better players in the end. And as for McLaurin being cheaper than Metcalf and A.J. Brown, are we sure about that? Because I'm actually not. McLaurin has had, of the two teams, the worst quarterback play by a pretty significant margin. He's been about a 1,000-yard guy. He's a number one receiver. He's young. He's talented. I think Brown, McLaurin, Metcalf, etc., depending on how you want to rank them, are all in a pretty similar tier grouping, coming out at the same time and having similar-ish production. Fewer TDs for Terry, but, quarterback play was bad. And remember the way contracts tend to work. The last guy to get paid often ends up getting more. So I don't think you're going to be able to get Terry McLaurin on a 3-year, $20 million deal. I think the A.J. Brown trade value and contract is actually about what you would have to expect to give up and give him if you were to go acquire him, because that is typically how markets work out. Could he get a discount? Sure, but probably not. Now, I like doing trade mailbags. They're fun. You guys have fun ideas and good ideas too. If you want us to keep doing them, well, we keep needing your ideas, because once we mention it, can't just do the same video twice. So if you have trade ideas, throw them in the comment section using hashtag Titans. From G's on YouTube, trading another Terry McLaurin-focused one. Scary Terry and a fourth in exchange for a first, third, and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. So a lot of the same coverage we just had makes sense to me about McLaurin and his value. I think you're closer on the value. I think you could get rid of the fourth or get rid of NWI in some capacity. I think first and third is about the right value, give or take a little bit. If you're throwing an NWI, maybe you get a 5th or a 6th round pick back instead. I like putting a receiver in the trade. I think that's a smart idea. The value in the end is close. I don't think the Commanders are getting quite enough. Obviously, many Titans fans are excited about a potential breakout year for Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, but across the NFL, his value is simply not going to be that high. And to come back to Scary Terry, don't get your hopes up for him. It would be very surprising to me, I guess in a good way, to see the Titans say, A.J. Brown, you work great in our offense. We don't want to pay you $25 million. Let's get a first and a third back. And then to take a hypothetical first and third and the money you were going to give to A.J. Brown and give it to McLaurin. That's the type of Madden-only lateral move you don't see very often. Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. But it's not typically how NFL teams tend to operate. With that said, that could change this time next year, depending on what happens with Burks and Robert Woods in particular. From Mark Jones, trade for DK Metcalf or OBJ. So again, OBJ is a free agent. You do not have to trade for him. There are a couple of different OBJ-focused questions, but this one had a trade as part of it. Just sign him. If you want Odell Beckham, you can sign him right now. It is that simple if the contract money works out. As for Metcalf, it's fun. He's talented. Same issues you run into with the A.J. Brown versus Terry McLaurin debate. So of the two, I actually think Lockett would be more obtainable and feasible for Tennessee. But I want to hear from you guys. Pick a wide receiver. Type TL for Tyler Lockett or type in DK for DK Metcalf. From the Sports Star, trade away Taylor Lewan. This is not the first time I've seen in the comments a trade away Taylor Lewan idea, but it doesn't make any sense to me because who the hell is going to be your left tackle? Are you going to you're going to move Dylan Radins over there? Nicholas Petit-Frere couldn't play left tackle at Ohio State that well. He's going to be your day one left tackle. That entire left side of the line would suddenly be a massive, massive red flag. So for Tennessee, I don't see how it makes sense this offseason. Now, if he gets banged up and struggles, next year's deal, there's no more guaranteed money left. So you could move on from him next year. But right now, he is too important to your team to dump in a trade or any type of movement right now. If you guys want more Titans videos, make sure you are subscribed. Hit that big red button and join us every day for more Titans coverage.